Welcome to today's episode of The Irresistible Factor. I'm really excited to have a guest from Canada today. I'm interviewing Margaret Coons, who is the founder and CEO of Nuts for Cheese. So welcome to the podcast, Margaret. I'm really happy to have my listeners hear from you today.
Thanks so much, Christy. I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you. I have so many questions for you, but I first need you to talk about Nuts for Cheese. So talk about the brand, what it is, and then I'd love to hear about the name.
Absolutely. So yeah, my company started in 2015. So I actually founded Nuts for Cheese at a farmer's market here in London, Ontario, where we're based. And so I was working as a chef at a vegan restaurant in town and started there during my undergrad and kind of worked my way up through the ranks of the restaurant and, had a real passion for food. I've been vegetarian since I was 12 and vegan since I was about 19. And so I really wanted to continue to work in the food industry. And I was making these vegan cheeses for the restaurant out of cashew milk. And I was doing a lot of fermentation at the time and experimenting with different recipes and flavors. And I thought I would try a farmer's market for the summer. This was back in 2015 and just really took off from there. So it's been just over 8 years now. And we've grown the business primarily into retailers across Canada and the US. But we've also launched a few new product lines in Nuts for Butter, which is a cashew and coconut based butter. And then we also just launched our Nuts for Cream Cheese products as well.
Awesome. That's amazing. Talk about going from farmer's market to brand that you have to figure out how to get distribution on. Like that's it sounds, I've heard it happen, but I know it's much harder than it sounds. So we were a farmer's market brand. Now we're a retail brand. It's not the same.
No, it's not. And it was an interesting journey for me because I was 24 when I started the company. It was my first kind of like real job, I would say, outside of the restaurant industry. I'd worked in the restaurant industry for every job I'd ever had. And I was an English major, so I didn't have a business background at all. And I was really just kind of figuring it out as I went along. And it was really scrappy and really grassroots. And in a lot of ways it still is, but particularly in the first number of years. And when I first started, I was renting the restaurant kitchen actually in the middle of the night to make these products. So I would cook dinner at the restaurant. I would go home, get my bag of cashews and my vacuum sealer. I'd bring everything back to the restaurant and work there until about 4 a.m. And sometimes I have a friend helping me, wrap cheese and saran wrap and put stickers on it for the farmer's market. And it was a lot of kind of figuring things out as we went in terms of, hopping on the government website to learn about food regulations on product labels and, things like that. And I was in the early days, driving to Toronto, Ontario, which is about 2 hours from where we are, a couple times a week with coolers, filling my Toyota Corolla and delivering by hand product to our, 15 independent natural food stores that had agreed to carry us. And so it was a lot of, really building like that, like store by store, kind of brick by brick, and then eventually starting to figure out different distribution methods when we kind of hit more of a critical mass.
So this is an interesting thing that you just said, which I think is true for a lot of entrepreneurs, but I want to know if you could even know what it is. So that you said this is sort of your first job outside of working in a restaurant. Like what makes someone say, I'm going to start a brand instead of I'm going to go work for a brand, or I'm going to go, what makes you do, because that's a big deal, right? To do that with no experience, not having you didn't work for a brand, you didn't work in a store, you didn't work at retail. What makes that happen where you're just like, I'm just going to do this instead of all the million jobs I could have potentially done?
I always kind of like to say that it was like a really happy accident. Like, I don't think I knew what I was getting into, and I'm kind of glad I didn't because it's been an amazing journey, but it's absolutely been a really challenging one as well. And I think you can easily get scared if you know too much when you're started. And so I was kind of just putting one foot in front of another at the time. And I didn't have a business plan when I started. I didn't really envision that it was going to turn into a brand or, end up where we are today at all. I didn't imagine that I was going to have a large team or, a manufacturing facility that, I have to manage all this equipment for and inventory and things like that. So really it was, I think it's a personality trait where I've always kind of thrown myself 150% into whatever I'm doing. And I think I had a, entrepreneurial spirit about me. I was, teaching yoga from a young age. I was, I didn't have a culinary background when I started at the restaurant either, other than working in restaurants. I ended up taking a culinary course after my undergrad. But even that, it was kind of just following the passion and following what was exciting at the time.
So you have retail distribution now.
Mhm.
How much retail distribution and what's your goal?
So we're in about 4,000 stores across North America right now, just over 2,000 in Canada and about 2,000 in the US.
Wow.
It's been, really exciting to grow the business through these amazing retail partners. And, in Canada, it really did start with the independent health food channel. And it was really me, looking up a region and calling every health food store in the city and asking if they'd let me come by and bring them some samples. And, at the time, it was a very niche category that was really, it's become a lot more developed. It's still a very new category that is still developing, but
Definitely.
wasn't a lot of artisanal vegan cheese on the market, especially in Canada at the time. And so a lot of people were, I think, taking a chance on me and willing to
Yeah,
give
yeah.
a try. It wasn't a huge risk for them. And so we had a lot of success getting into those early retailers. And then we started to have some larger retailers come calling because there was a demand for this type of product, but it wasn't widely available. And so we scaled into almost every major retailer in Canada, outside of, the Walmart and the club channel. We're not quite there yet, but and then the US launch, we actually started selling in the US kind of right at the start of COVID. And so a number of us from my team, about 5 of us, had flown down to LA for Expo West in 2020, the show that was,
Mm.
and as
I
soon
was
as
also there waiting for the show to be canceled.
and it was like as soon as we were on the plane and I was seeing people around us, checking their phones and being like, oh, Whole Foods isn't coming anymore. Trader Joe's has dropped out, whatever. And we landed and the show had officially been canceled. But we spent that week, I posted on LinkedIn, who's in LA and wants to meet us. We're here for a week. We're willing to, kind of go anywhere, meet anyone. We really want to, build our relationships and grow some connections here. And we ended up meeting our first US retail partner called Best Used Vegan Paradise, which is this amazing store in Hollywood. And we were shipping directly to LA to, service this one retailer. And we kind of similar approach to Canada, started with a few really strategic, amazing, aligned partners. And then started building the distribution from there, started with a couple of regional distributors, and one in the East and one in the West, and then opened up kind of one by one every UNFI and KeHE warehouse in the country. So we're in primarily natural channel stores now, but Sprouts is our biggest customer by doors, and we're in a number of Whole Foods regions as well as a lot of independent chains.
That's awesome. So you were sort of probably not even consciously rattling off all the jobs that you had to learn to do at the beginning. So you had to learn manufacturing, you had to learn about food safety, you had to be a salesperson, a CEO, marketing, right? That's a lot of jobs to do, especially when you didn't have any idea what was going to happen. So that's incredible. Are you at the point now where you've been able to hire people and have a team that works with you?
Yeah, I think, it's as a solo founder and, an entrepreneur, I think it's really hard to keep my nose out of just about anything. But
Mhm.
I think especially because I care so much and it's been so exciting for me to learn all these different roles over the years. But I will say I've been very fortunate to build an incredible team and have, awesome people around me that I really completely trust to do an awesome job at their function. And it's taken us a long time to get here, especially when you're small and you're scrappy and you're growing a manufacturing company without funding. It's sometimes it's hard to make sure that you've got the right people in the right roles and that you've got the support that you need. But we have a really amazing team now, and I have 4 really incredible senior leaders that support the functions that I was doing up until a year ago, and they've
Wow.
built really incredible teams that work with them as well.
So, when you think about your journey, what have been the biggest challenges that you've sort of faced and that you maybe weren't expecting, or even what is it now? Because now you've got sort of critical mass and you're in a lot of places, but you must still feel the pressure to get to whatever's next. So what are the challenges?
I think our biggest challenge in the earlier years, and as I mentioned, we really were kind of growing in a grassroots way. We're growing very quickly. We had about 50% year-over-year growth every year since we started the company, but we had no funding, and so I actually didn't raise any financing until year 7, and
Wow.
challenging to purchase equipment and build a team, and so we had some.
How did you manage all of that?
We were, lucky to receive a number of grants in the early days. I think
Okay.
everything that we did was really, really handcrafted. We didn't have a lot of efficiency opportunities. It was a lot of hard work, a lot of, sweat equity on a lot of those, early team members that, kind of just did what had to be done to make it happen. And was able to get a few small bank loans in the early days as well, because we were profitable and we were investing everything that we earned back into the business.
Yeah.
So that was, our primary strategy, but we did really hit a point where we couldn't do it anymore, where we were starting to get into these larger customers. We didn't have the resources we needed to, secure equipment or build up the team appropriately, or, fund any kind of marketing and sales activities. And so I think that was really challenging. Every time a piece of equipment went down in the early years, it was challenging because you'd want to figure out how to fix it yourself, because you don't want to hire a maintenance person to come in, like all of those little things that come with being a manufacturer. And I think a challenge that's been a challenge of ours since the beginning and still is today is consumer awareness, and building awareness around a new category, because there's a lot of education that's
Oh,
required.
yeah.
Like, number one, like, what is vegan cheese and vegan butter or dairy-free products? Why do we need them? Why do we care? And then what sets us apart from other dairy-free products as well? Because there's now a lot more, shreds and slices and, kind of more mainstream consumer products in the dairy-free space on the market. But we really have focused a lot on the quality of our product and being the premium version of the types of products in the category. And so there's a consumer education piece around that with a limited marketing budget, we've had to be really creative and scrappy.
I'm sure. I want to go back to the capital raise, because I want to ask you some details around that. But first, I want to talk about the category. So I think I'm imagining part of the challenges at the beginning when vegan cheeses came out as a thing for mainstream, they weren't very good and they didn't taste like cheese, right? And so there was a perception. I mean, even for me, my not this expo, but the one before it, I was sort of like, is there going to be a good vegan cheese? Because I thought that a lot of them didn't taste like cheese. And now they're starting to really get developed, and innovation has been amazing around in the category. But has that been an issue for you, trying to sort of overcome never mind the awareness, what is vegan cheese, but then the vegan cheese doesn't taste like cheese?
Absolutely. And I think, it was kind of like a two-step thing in the early days. I'd find at the farmer's market, people would say, oh, like vegan cheese, I don't have to have that. I'm not vegan, lactose intolerance, whatever. And then now it's like, oh, I tried vegan cheese and it's gross. I don't want it. So
yeah.
It is challenging, because there are, a lot of really big companies that are trying to come out with a dairy-free alternative, because they know that the market demand is there and that people need these types of products, but they're not necessarily good tasting or have good ingredients in them. And so, we are trying to think about, how do we demonstrate to people that, like, yes, maybe you had some vegan cheese or had not a great experience, but we're the one you should have tried first. So, given we're all natural, we're organic, we're fermented, and it actually tastes good and tastes like cheese. So it is kind of bringing people back to a category that they either haven't heard of or maybe haven't had an amazing experience with.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, it's harder in some ways than just launching something brand new that people don't know yet, because you've got the people that don't know, and then you've got the people who know and already said no. So I think that's a really interesting challenge from a marketing perspective. How are you dealing with that? Like, what are you doing to get people educated and excited about the category and your brand specifically?
For us specifically, I think the biggest thing is that when people taste it, they love it and they buy it. And, we are a premium product with a premium price point. And so it really is that barrier to getting consumers to give the product a try. And then we do end up, with diehard fans that love the product and are committed to our brand specifically. So we do a lot of demos at our retail partners to, educate people in the store, show them where they can buy it, give them a coupon, let them taste the product. And those are really successful for us. And we do, a number of consumer shows. We do a number of trade shows as well, to really just get the product into as many people's mouths as possible. And then we do a lot, working with other brands and partners on social media to get people to, think about how to use the products creatively and use them in recipes, and really kind of have that like, culinary appeal to showing that, it's a great product for a cheese board, but you can also cook with it and you can have these like amazing experiences, but just dairy free, that people might think that they have to miss out on if they don't consume dairy products.
Yeah. I want to go back to capital raising. So what year did you raise? Last year?
2022, we closed our Series A. in June.
And how was that process for you? Because I think it's changed so dramatically. Even since then, I think it's changed dramatically. So talk about the process, because I've heard a couple of different things that I want to explore with you. One is right now, capital's almost impossible to raise. Very opposite of how it was pre-COVID, and even a little bit post-COVID. And then the other question is raising capital as a woman founder. I think that's been challenging for a lot of the women that I've spoken to. So I want to hear about both of those things.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's ever an easy thing to do to raise capital, no matter who you are. And I think it's also really, it's a lot about storytelling and making sure that you can find aligned partners that really believe in, like, it's a marketing exercise, like for not only for yourself to kind of validate your business plan and your growth strategy by being able to tell the story and really believe in it, but then get other people to join you in that vision and believe in it with you. And I feel very fortunate that we found very, aligned and great partners to work with. But it was my first time going through a process like that. I'd, never pitched to investors before. I'd never raised any capital. And so we ended up pitching to about 8 or 9 groups. The process took about 6 months. So we had a number of conversations with a number of partners that seemed like a good fit for us from a, value standpoint, and people that were, aligned in terms of their other investments in their portfolio. We ended up moving forward with a Canadian group named Forge Capital, based in Calgary, and they were our lead investor. And we closed the round of $5.5 million in June of last year. And then,
Wow.
It's been really incredible because it's allowed us to really build out the team and at our facility, achieve, some significant quality certifications for our plant that required some investment, and, really put some money towards driving that, consumer awareness piece through our marketing efforts. So, I think, the experience I had, it was absolutely, a full-time job for the period of time that the raise was happening. And I feel very fortunate in my experience, because I do know it's not the experience that a lot of people are having right now or ever have. Yes. And, I think particularly for women or minority or diverse founders of any type, it's not only a challenge to be raising money, but it's a challenge to be in business at all, and to be, having people take a chance on you for, whatever it is, whether it's trying the product, and getting the retail placement, whether it's, raising money or anything. I think there's unique experiences that people have, and, finding aligned partners is not an easy thing to do, but I think it's absolutely critical.
Yes, definitely. And so I have a question for you. When you were vetting investors and partners, were you also saying, no, were you like, I'll talk to everyone, or were you like, no, I need to only talk to the right people? Or did you sort of open yourself up and then decide who the right people were?
We've had a lot of people come at us over the years, and a lot of those people were not the right people. And it became very clear very early on. I feel very fortunate that I've been, surrounded by very great advisors throughout my journey. And so I have one advisor who I've been, working with. He's on our board now, but he's been probably my, my primary mentor since year 2. And so he's been with me along this journey of, different VC groups and investors coming at us, and people wanting to, acquire the company or acquire most of it and have me be an employee, or, whatever the different structure might be. And it was, conversations that we had with a number of these groups. And then I was able to kind of bounce that back off of someone who had more experience and had been there before, and said, this isn't something that's good for you. And when it came time to actually raise our Series A, I found another mentor who I'd known for some time, who is actually the chair of our board now, who really helped me through the process and acted as an advisor to our raise. And so the groups that we pitched to were groups that, kind of had been vetted, and he had good experiences with and had good reputation in the natural foods industry. So it wasn't really a super wide pool that we pitched to initially. It was really kind of the people that seemed like the best fit for this specific type of product and industry.
And you raised a fair amount of money, right? That's a good raise. How have you felt about it? Did you wish you raised more? Like, every time someone raises money, we help someone raise a $10 million investment we helped a brand with, which was amazing. And it felt like so much money, but then it wasn't. And it was shocking in a way.
Totally. And I mean, I think when you're a growing company, you always need more money than you think you And it's no one has a crystal ball. So I got all kinds of advice from all kinds of people, like raise more, raise less, this is a good amount. This is going to
Yeah.
last a long time. It's not going to last you for any amount of whatever. So I think like you kind of have to just go with what you make the decision to do. And then, every plan kind of changes the second that you make it. And, I think for us, it was cash flow was a huge stressor for me for a long time of, not having that financial backing and, trying to pay suppliers and get a paycheck in from a distributor and make payroll. And like, that was really top of mind for me for a long, long time. And I won't say that that goes away, whether you have money in the bank or not. I think that you kind of become really accustomed to that, almost like a fear cycle of scarcity. And so I think it gave me an opportunity to have more of like a exercise of abundance and think about like where we can now support the business. And I think it's a completely different business now than it was a year ago because we have different structures in place. Our SG&A looks different, our team looks different, and now it's not, kind of payroll to payroll, but it's how do we support this foundation that we've built and how do we, make the organization really fit the structure that we've created that we think is kind of ideal to build the business.
That's awesome. You're obviously a very positive person. You've almost not stopped smiling the whole time. I'm wondering if there were moments over your journey where you were just like, no, I cannot do this anymore. Or did you always feel like, okay, I'm just going to find the way? And did you have those moments? And if you did, how did you sort of get yourself past them?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting. I do smile a lot and I get that feedback all the time. Like I was at an event just the other week and someone came up to me after a couple hours in this room and he said, you've not stopped smiling the entire time. And so I think I'm certainly a very positive leaning person. And I think to some degree, like you have to be to go through this process and not kind of lose your mind. But absolutely, it's challenging. And I think there's been lots of periods throughout the 8 years that I've been doing this. And I'm like, I don't know if this is working. We've had a lot of good fortune. We've had a lot of great success, but at the same time, it's like, for an entrepreneur, it's like nothing's ever happening fast enough and nothing's ever happening enough, right? So I think it's really easy to look around and compare to, other things that you see, other brands, whether they're doing great or not so much. And for me, I think it's been an exercise around like not trying to compare myself to feel better by looking at, someone who's maybe not having the same experience or not trying to make myself feel really, envious or stressed that I'm not where another brand is and trying to keep that even keel. But I have a full roster of, self-care practices that help me kind of maintain that steadiness. But, I think like any founder for sure, I think every few weeks or every few days, you're kind of like riding the high. And then the next day you're like, oh, well, that was fun. So it's all over. And then the next day you feel great again. And so
it's wild, isn't it? It's
a lot
wild.
of it. Yeah.
Yes. Interesting. What's next for you guys? Like, where do you want to be in 5 years? What's the goal for the brand?
I think for the next 5 years, the US market is still new to us. So we're 2.5 years into our launch there. I think it would be, really incredible to continue to grow our distribution in both Canada and the US and look at some of those larger conventional retailers as the category develops. Like, are we going to be ready for a more mainstream retailer? And at what point does the market support that expansion? We're ready from a manufacturing standpoint to really grow the business at this point. We've put a lot of resources and investment into our plant and into our team. And so we're, from a growth standpoint, I'm excited to find out where kind of those next levels of volume kind of unlock. And for me, having a background as a chef, I love product innovation. And so yesterday I was in the facility, for example, doing R&D on some potential future flavors. And that's really, really fun for me. So I think, continuing to build our line of products and expand into new dairy-free categories and try new things out is going to be really fun and exciting. And I think we've got a lot of room to grow in both Canada and the US over the next number of years.
What's your biggest selling product? Like, what's your most popular product?
Our unbelievable cashew cheese wedge is our best-selling product in both Canada and the US. It's our top seller. So it's like a creamy coconut cashew-based brie, and it is awesome. It can work in both savory and sweet applications. So you can like bake it in a puff pastry with some jam, or you can, I use it in like Caesar salad dressing or pasta sauce, or even just, on a cheese board. It's really kind of mild and creamy and versatile.
And when you talk about the readiness, like
Mhm.
it is mainstream going to happen, do you think, for vegan cheese? Like, there's been there have been a lot of ups and downs with
Yeah.
vegan things, right? Because of the Beyond Burgers and all that stuff. Like there were all those giant IPOs, and then the kind of fell apart a little bit, and the demand wasn't there because the products weren't high quality, or for whatever reason, or people couldn't afford them. How do you feel about where things are going?
Yeah, I think that as a consumer of, plant-based and dairy-free products myself for a long time, I tend to gravitate towards products that have, real food ingredients and
Yeah.
are premium end of the category. That's not to say that I don't love vegan nuggets. I feel like that's what I exclusively eat at trade shows.
Yes, there's no shortage of them.
It's amazing to have those options, but I think for, the more mainstream consumer, particularly in the dairy-free space, like people can choose to eat a meat product or a vegan meat product, and that's really kind of dependent on different lifestyle choices. And for dairy-free consumers, a lot of people have an allergy, and so I think that they genuinely do need a great option that makes them feel good. And that's been a huge
Yeah.
motivation for us, is that like we want to not only give people an option because they have to eat something that's dairy-free, but they want to have something that actually gives them the experience of dairy-free cheese. So I do think it's going to continue to grow and evolve and, fall apart and rebuild and all these things over the years. But for us, I think our kind of focus is really around keeping the quality really high, keeping the ingredients super clean and super premium, and then, having fermented products that make people feel great, so that if you eat an entire wedge of our cheese versus an entire wedge of dairy cheese, you're not going to have a giant stomach ache. It's actually going to be something that's good for you. And I don't know, I think that's the kind of consumer I am. So I, hope that is what, continues to develop in the marketplace.
Yeah, that's awesome. Any advice is what I love to ask at when I'm getting ready to wrap up. What advice do you have for someone who's either just starting or who's starting and struggling? Because I think right now this is a really interesting, and I don't know if it's good or bad, maybe it's both, moment for founders, because there was let's just say 3 years pre-COVID, everyone was writing checks. It wasn't that challenging to get funded. You didn't have to be profitable. You didn't have to worry about your cost of goods. There was so much money floating around. And that now I feel like it's the pendulum has swung all the way the other way. So there are a lot of people who are like, should I do this? Is this the right time? What would you tell them?
I think it's hard no matter what the timing is, whether you have a lot of funding behind you or not. I think there's an opportunity for an exercise right now for a lot of founders to figure out how that they can be sustainable on their own, whether or not the funding is going to come through. And I think that is, in my experience, that's important, but that's also because that's been my journey. Like
Yeah, because you started out self-funded and you did it for a long time.
Did it for a long time. And I think that allowed me to really learn a lot about keeping things super tight and lean.
Yeah.
And we're in a different position now where, the infrastructure is a lot bigger now and our situation is different. But I'm glad I had that experience because it taught me how to be really disciplined, and it was very stressful, but it allowed me to kind of learn those skill sets. I think my biggest piece of advice is that it's really important to be nice to yourself throughout the journey, because it's really easy to, if something doesn't feel like it's working, feel like it's you. And, there's just a lot of things that are out of your control that are at play all the time. And I think to keep it sustainable and keep getting up every day and, fighting an uphill battle towards whatever brand you're trying to build is, it's important to kind of like be able to continue to come back to yourself and take care of yourself throughout the journey. Cause I think that's the one thing I hear the most from founders that have exited or, started doing something different with their lives outside of their businesses. I wish I took better care of myself through the journey. And that's something that I'm still in the journey, but I feel like that when I think about the early years, and so I'm trying to do more of that now.
That's awesome. And when you talked a little bit, I want to just touch on one more thing, because I think it's interesting. You have raised capital, you started to do some marketing. What's the thing that's working the best for you guys? Because there's so much talk about how Facebook and Instagram aren't working the way they used to, and the analytics kind of have gotten really bad, and TikTok is better. And now there's 7 million platforms and email and blah, blah, blah. What's working for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot of noise out there. And I think it's hard to rely on any one algorithm or platform to do it all. I think any opportunity that we have to kind of authentically share our voice or connect with people has been really helpful for us. And a lot of that has been through, me kind of getting outside my comfort zone and trying to,
Yeah.
put my face on social media or finding a great brand to do, an aligned partnership with. I think those have been really impactful for us recently, because then it's not only promoting our brand, but it's showing people how to use the product. It's showing, other like products in the category, and it's building the whole segment. So we've been focusing on more of that, and, really just trying to tell the story, I think, as well. That's something that I hear a lot, is people love hearing the story. So I've been trying to put myself out there more and take opportunities to share.
Is that hard, or like you love it, hate it, you're in the middle?
I'm in the middle. I think public speaking used to be like my biggest fear of all time. And I've, grown out of that to some degree, but it's still challenging. I think every time I
Yeah.
get given the speaking opportunity over the last couple of years, I always jump at it, but I always, feel very nervous until it's over. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's kind of one of those muscles you got to keep exercising.
I think really important as a founder, because you've got to do it all the time, right? Whether it's to consumers or to investors or to your team.
And I think it's how you build connection. And I think the more like authentic connections that you have, the more your brand will resonate with people.
Awesome. Anything else you want to share before we wrap up? I think this is fantastic. I'm excited. I need to find your cheese and try it.
Yeah, please do.
Are you in Whole Foods in New Jersey?
No, we're not, but we're in Whole Foods in the Midwest and Pacific Northwest regions right now. But in New Jersey, we are in like Greens. We're in all the
Oh yeah,
NCG.
I have a Greens.
Yeah, we're in Mother's or Mom's Market, I believe you have there.
Yep. Awesome. Well, I
Yeah.
can't wait to try it. Amazing.
Awesome. No, this was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.